Some anti-PNM critics might even roll their eyes. Because you hear all of these things, but it's not as though the PNM to a lot of people is this titan institution that, you know, as much as the party would like to point out all it did for the country, a lot of people will point out all the things they think they did to the country. So history will continue to evolve how we view the PNM historically. But the point that I'm trying to make is, when they say it, it kind of seems cheap. But then we get the other side doing things to kind of prove the point for the PNM, to kind of show us what the lack of structure, the lack of institutional knowledge, the lack of traditions and stability and systems, what it might look like, and that is with regards to the opposition as well as other third parties. And the UNC and the NTA just seem to be unable to get out of their own way. It's one thing if your political opponent catches you in something. Ooh, look at a scandal. And then they go out of their way to highlight it into the media, to make sure that it goes viral, it gets circulation in the news cycle. But it's another thing when you make decisions amongst yourselves as the people not in government that leads to you, the collective, looking worse off. And it's times like this, I look at the PNM and I think to myself, oh, this is how they win elections. They just have patience. The opposition, as well as its various partners, reminds me of a certain American football team who has a reputation over the last decade. Just you wait, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And to some extent, this seems obvious in hindsight. You have a very strong personality like Gary Griffith, and you could see where his aggressive style of speaking, he's not always that way. There are times when he's very articulate, controlled, measured, brilliant. But there are times when he's very defensive, like other politicians, maybe more so than other politicians. You know, when things kind of escalate. And then it's not as though we see all of the members of the UNC of bastions of grace and patience and calm and tolerance, good temperament, etc., etc. Now, it seems as though more and more that Gary Griffith, political leader of the NTA, is pointing towards deputy political leader of the UNC, Jerlene John, as the source of the problem, in that he believes that Jerlene John has managed to influence the political leader of the UNC with the ideology that the UNC could win on its own, despite the fact that technically the UNC at best can tie at the local level and lose at the national level, because at the national level it lost twice. It does not contest Tobago's THA elections because it's a non-factor in that regard, which to some extent one could argue, if you want to be national. Now, interesting, he doesn't necessarily look to blame the political leader of the UNC, which we did yesterday. But I can't help but to some extent agree with what he's reported to have said with regards to the level of, well, it just seemed disrespectful what Kamala did say. And now I do have to ask, to what extent does the UNC really believe that they could run it back a third time with some minor adjustments, because the best additions to the UNC are probably, arguably, in the most junior portions of the political hierarchy, right? The people who I have hope for, who impress me, are not necessarily the top, although they do the best work when it comes to parliamentary debates. But to what extent do we believe that the United National Congress could run it back solo? Because technically speaking, this executive never won by itself. So while the sample size is very small, we're talking 3 general elections total, 1 win for the partnership, 2 losses for essentially the UNC, because it was a vote Kamala campaign on their re-election attempt. Gary has come out and basically said, you know, he's questioned the logic. But the sample size is small. It's not as though a Kamala-led UNC has done 10 general elections and lost all 10. But with regards to elections, 3 is a lot. 2 losses is a lot. And the worst part about it is, because I guess to some extent maybe Gary rubbed them the wrong way, somebody rubbed him the wrong way and ignited his spark. We'll never know for sure, right? Because we're on the outside, but we could see potentially either side being at fault. The thing is, it's playing out in the public. And even if, because now both parties are going up with 41 candidates, even if the NTA withdraws, so the whole splitting votes question is off the table, right? I know I don't expect Gary to withdraw or the NTA to withdraw. I'm just saying, if they kind of bow out of the general, even if that happens, to some extent, this situation has already damaged the UNC. Because in part, you would hope, is the PNM doing anything to work with anybody? Doesn't look so, right? Because they can't work with the UNC. So the UNC now should be doing everything it can to appear as a collaborator. But to some extent, how Kamala phrased what she said, how she framed it on Monday night, I never thought that it kind of sounded disrespectful to third parties before I knew that it was specifically about the NTA, or at least potentially specifically about the NTA. You're punching down. You called yourself as one of the top 2, so you're essentially punching down at somebody below you, somebody lower ranked than you, with less influence than you. And I just thought, like, and maybe some people might say Gary deserves it, but at the end of the day, it kind of gives us another example of, we're not really that collaborative, you know. We just go through the motions and say the right things in the moment, but we can't sustain it. So again, the PNM just has to be patient. Something will go wrong with the opposition, and potentially we could see their path to re-election despite all of the controversies that the PNM has. All right, let's try and speed through the rest. What has come out of the wooden ladder situation with the fire service is essentially that it seems as though these ladders should have never been approved in the first place. From reports on one of the daily newspapers, the style of equipment, we use British style, which will have the ladders constructed to operate a certain way. These ladders were constructed to operate with American standards. And then on top of that, there's also, I think, questions. Well, I mean, it was some of the initial reports when these ladders' suitability was brought up in the past was the fact that it couldn't necessarily fit the trucks. We had to fit it to the trucks. They had to do some welding or some adjustments to the trucks to get the ladders to fit. There are a lot of questions with regards to how these ladders were signed off on, and there are a lot of questions with regards to the current head of the fire services. I believe it's Mr. Arnold Bristow, the chief fire officer, currently, who was the engineering officer, brigades engineer, right? He has claimed that he wasn't the chief fire officer at the time, but he was part of the process as the brigades engineer that apparently allowed these ladders to be put in use. The female fire officer, who did not give a name, who was injured, she has basically said she never wants to use this again because she tried to set up the ladder, and I think the mechanism failed and it slid back on her. It didn't fall on top of her, but the mechanism for the extended ladder, the extendable part slid back down on her hand, and she's out of work for a month, and I guess she has to figure out where she's going on from here with her career. The fact that she's willing to speak out, I think, is a net good for the society. It might not necessarily be good for her career. But now this has come into a procurement controversy. And I think it has probably reached the point of a full-out, proper, this needs to be investigated, because we're not talking small money. We're talking almost $50,000 a ladder for ladders that potentially should have never been approved. So not only are we questioning the amount of money spent per ladder, but the process which should have rejected these ladders, seems to have been circumvented. That screams corruption. Of course, it needs to be proven in court. We don't necessarily know for sure all the details, hence why it needs to be investigated. But I believe the person in question, the chief fire officer, when asked to comment by the media, his response was, "I'm on vacation." Good to know. Good to know. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Moving on to the next story. Somebody sued the state and they won and they got some money. The police apparently did not do their checks and balances and arrested back in 2019 one Mr. Keon Simmons. Unfortunately, they were looking for an Adrian Simmons. So I believe when he was finally brought before a magistrate, essentially his defense was, "Your Honor, I am Keon, not Adrian." And he was ordered to be released. Except the police kept him detained at a police station for hours before eventually releasing him, after it was essentially determined that they got the wrong guy. So he sued, and now he's gotten $111,000 for his troubles. Not a bad day of work. You just need to have your rights infringed by officers who apparently don't know how to check a person's identity before they arrest them. That's just brilliant. Just one more thing. It's a small anecdote, but it's piling on. It's piling on because this is not the first time we've had a wrongful arrest, wrongful prosecution, malicious prosecution case that has, gone sour for the state. The state had to basically admit, we did wrong. But in this case, it's preventable. One would think, one would hope that college-educated people, because there are quite a few of them in police service, could do something as basic as making sure that the first name of the person they're arresting matches up with the first name of the person on the warrant. Is that too much to ask? I don't know. Moving on. The court has also had to issue an order to Customs to essentially give a company, this is Seabox Trinidad Limited, they had to basically tell them that they need to clear Seabox's cargo as if were an express consignment area until further order by the court. Basically give them express treatment, which apparently Seabox was not able to get. Now, the thing about this is, and what kind of bothers me, is basically because Seabox is shipping via sea, apparently at some point somebody in Customs basically said, well, you're sea cargo, you're not couriers. And I just kind of wonder if this is just someone who cannot, understand something beyond what they're accustomed to and use a little bit of judgment, because this is the Custom and Excise Division of the Ministry of Finance, responsible for the legal ports of entry, of which we have many problems. But c'est la vie, right? C'est la vie. It's just a bad situation, and hopefully they'll learn their lesson this time. Probably not. Folks, let's take a break. When we come back, we will have the good lady herself. Stay tuned to Talking About on WSN. We'll be right back after this.
Hello there and welcome to AM Prime on WESN Content Capital. Before we even start this repatriation and reintegration process that we've already failed, or are we doomed to fail?
You've got to invest in the institutions that you've established to carry out those sorts of core functions.
We now get into the regional updates to give you an understanding of what's happening across our neighboring islands.
We have available a number of films that are worth showing.
So it was day one when the French Revolution started to develop the concept of universal human rights.
What happened this time is unprecedented. It's one of the largest terrorist attacks in history.
Let's welcome Carl to the program. Carl is over there next to himself. Hello, Carl.
Silky anteater or pygmy anteater, and we have two of the three species of anteaters right here.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
I find that was distasteful. The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the
not
game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug.
You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God. So we kind of at a stalemate.
You'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI. Worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. And joining me, as always, every Wednesday, is the good lady herself, former Minister of Finance and Attorney at Law, Mrs. Karen Nunes Teixeira. Good morning.
Good morning to you. You're sounding very vibrant this morning, Sean.
Well, you know, I guess the news is usually so sad
Yes.
That I can't let it affect me, and I can't just be a downer all the time, despite the fact that 90% of what I have to say, unfortunately, is not positive.
But that's the nature of news. They always say that if a dog bit a man, that does not make news. But if a man bit a dog, that becomes news.
Right,
so you have to realize people look for the unusual.
And then on this show, it's not as though this isn't a news reporting show. So it's not like we could reserve time for nice stories. I mean, I try to sprinkle them in at the end of my first segment, but I can't always get to them. And the more important stories tend to be when things are going wrong, because people need to know about it so that we could do something about it, right? Unfortunately.
And I don't even like to even use the word wrong as much as where we have challenges, and we need to expose the challenges that we have, so hopefully that people will address the challenges by doing that. I prefer to use that.
Karen, you are the lawyer. I am just a simple TV man. I will just use the word wrong. Things are going wrong, folks. We need to do something about it. Now, one of the challenges that we face, to use your phrase, and this is something, at least from the perspective of foreign exchange, if not in its totality, Karen has been speaking about, and almost from the very beginning, I think, when we talk about foreign exchange, because we've talked about foreign exchange and the shortage, we've had problems before COVID. So I think almost from the beginning of the show, you have highlighted this. We have foreign franchises, and the Forex goes to these foreign franchises. And even during COVID, it seemed as though we were continuing to open new foreign franchises, which is one of the issues you and others have with the situation. And the Minister of Health, he has come out to speak out against foreign fast food franchises and potentially fast food on a whole. We have a couple of local ones. But the foreign fast food franchises, we have an intersection of costs. Costs to the economy, costs to the society, costs to our health, right? That I think I spoke about this with Keaton yesterday, but I think we were even able to come up with more things where there may or may not be some negative consequences to society.
Yeah, and Sean and I always talk before, as you know, and I don't know that we're going to spend a whole half an hour on this topic, but a topic that I think was the other topic that we thought that we might bring up was the TCL issue with the increasing in the price of cement and almost creating a monopoly, and giving the background to that. But if we have time, we look at that. But coming back to the topic, I want to first say that congratulations and my respect really to Mr. I'm calling him Doctor, but he needs that title in truth, Minister Dayal Singh, for coming out at, I think they had a health and wellness seminar, and he spoke out about the effect of the fast food enterprise in Trinidad and the fast food business in Trinidad and the effect it has had on our health. And he made no bones about it to say that when we look at the cost to the country, you can't just look at it in a narrow sense. So before I look at it from the health perspective, as Sean has said, I have been speaking about these franchises for quite a while, and it's so coincidental that on Monday, on a show that I did, then Tuesday morning I saw the headlines. Of course, the headlines would have been decided and story written before I had discussed it on Monday afternoon, so it is pure coincidence. But I was asked, well, if you had a say in how you would start to deal with some of the issues that we have. I said, for one thing, I'll cut down the number of franchises we have in this country. I said, I am not saying we don't have to have any. I'm not going to go to an extreme position, but we are a small country, and the fact of the matter, there's so many negatives associated with these, and most of them are US-based foreign franchises, that they far outweigh the benefits, if any, to the country. Because if you are in government, we were looking at it from a government point of view, you can't just look at it, the benefit to the businessman or the business entity that is operating. You have to see how it benefits the country or does not. So one of the things the person asked you, well, what would I do? I said, I'd close down a lot of them. I said, what are we doing? And then I did look up this morning, I'm relying on the information that was in the article when I looked it up, how many. So if they're wrong, it's wrong on the website, on the computer where I look for the information. So when we look at KFC, there are 57 in this country. That's Trinidad and Tobago. When we look at Starbucks, it's 12. When we look at Subway, it's 42 in Trinidad and 3 in Tobago. And I think Pizza Hut might be 12. Anyway, by the time you add it all up, you go looking at over 150 US-based foreign franchises that are selling fast food. And the minister was very clear, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You can look it up. What is the negative of fast foods? Negative of fast food, they are poor dietary supplement. They do not give you your nutritional requirements. So it's even looking at it from a health perspective, it is not good for you to be eating fast food on a daily basis. Now, I'm not saying don't have it every now and again. Everybody has, I am not here to advocate not to have it at all. But I cannot understand how in this small little country of ours that so many of these US foreign franchises are allowed to operate in this country when what they sell to the public is not, it's almost like, well, next thing is I said it's like poison. But when I say like poison, it is bad for our health. And it is what the doctors say, the nutritionists will tell you, it's not what I am saying, it's what is reported. And there are far too many. So that's from a dietary, nutritional point of view. And a lot of it is given to our children. Many people feed that to their children. They go and buy a bucket of this, a lot of fast food, and that is what becomes the diet of many, many children on a too frequent basis. But let us start with the point that, from my economic point of view, a franchise to operate a US franchise or any franchise, but if it's a foreign franchise, and nearly every one that I know of is from the United States, you have to pay to be able to operate a franchise. And they're certainly not going to be paid in TT dollars. And I expect that every year you have to renew it. I don't believe that you get a franchise. I could be corrected, but I don't believe that you pay once a year and that's it. I believe every year you have to renew it, and it is a substantial amount. I just happened to look, now I don't know what it is for Trinidad, but I just happened to, let me not call the figure because I'll leave the figure out, but it was not an insignificant amount of US dollars in order to operate a franchise. So you're opening the franchise, you're using up the US dollars. And just in case people don't know, the economic bulletin that the central bank just issued in January said that our foreign exchange had dropped just in a few months from 7.9 billion, which wasn't good for us because I think in not too many years before, it was 10 billion. It went down to 6.8, 6.7. But the last report from January is 6.23. He said we lost $547 million in foreign exchange in a matter of a few months. So when you open up a foreign franchise...
Just to put that in perspective, it's not about the fact that we spent that amount, but rather the inflows were lower than the outflows.
But what outflows are there?
Our reserves dropped by 500. It's not the total amount spent, it's the reserves, and that's the problem because that point said being unsustainable.
Exactly, because and if you're going to have a reduction in your foreign exchange, remember, nobody's going to take our money, as other countries have found out, unless you have the US dollar, maybe you have the euro, but it usually is the US dollar. And if it is the foreign franchises that we have are productive, in a sense they are producing foreign exchange for us. That's how I mean that they are productive. We produce things so that you're adding to our foreign exchange, so you're adding to our economy is one thing, but they're not doing that. They're taking away because where's the, in fact, now having paid to set up the franchise, I'm not in the business, but I suspect at the end of the day, having gotten the permission to start it up in the first place, your profits, you have to pay a certain percentage of your profits to the franchise holder. And I'm certain it has to be in the US dollars. It's certainly not in Trinidad and Tobago dollars. Again, you see the outflow of our US dollars without seeing an inflow as a result of the foreign franchises. How are we benefiting as a country from a foreign exchange? We are not only are we not benefiting, it's the opposite. So that's the foreign exchange, and it is too many franchises in this country. It is unsustainable. Secondly, to that is the quality of employment. One of the things that we want to do as a developing country is that you want to develop the quality of opportunities in terms of employment, which is why, you know, you have the UTT, the COSTAT, the Arthur Lockjack, the SAMS, all of these tertiary level institutions in order to have a certain quality of employment. And I think Dr. Marlene Arts was talking about the figure of 3.2% being the unemployment level, but I won't go into a whole argument about that, only just to say that there's such a mismatch. So we should be concentrating on educating our people. The persons who are employed in these businesses, unless they're the managers, and you can't have too many managers, can you? Most of them, I can't tell you what their salaries are, but I am pretty certain they are at the lower end, and not only would they be at the lower end, but they have very few opportunities for upward mobility, which is what you want as a country, not for a business, for a country as a government. So in terms of opportunity for mobility, upward mobility, to improve your standard of living, your financial situation, for the vast majority of persons in that franchise business, there are very few winners. I saw that one of the big players announced in one of the papers anyhow, it said 1.3 billion in profits. So it means they're doing darn well. They're doing darn well. And nobody's against them doing very well. If at the end of the day, we as Trinidad are benefiting. But the final point, which brought me back to Minister Dayal Singh, Minister Dayal Singh made no bones about it. He said that the cost of the diet is, you need exercise too, obviously, but in what they call non-communicable disease. So it's a disease that you have not by somebody communicating it to you, but by the way that either your lifestyle, their lifestyle choices. And a major component of that lifestyle is your diet. And he has made no bones to say that those fast foods that we are eating in Trinidad and Tobago are contributing significantly to the significant increase in the what you call non-communicable diseases, which are diabetes, heart-related diseases, and kidneys, among others. So those are three major ones that come to mind. And it costs us because the health sector, which is where he is from, he's the Minister of Health, he sees the effect of persons coming there and to a large extent having these complications which cost us, the taxpayers, because of the quality of their diet. So on many, many levels, I think that the government, somebody grants the licenses. They can't just come into this country and open up a business. Somebody grants the license. So I am not saying that they can't have businesses, foreign brands here. I am saying we've got to reduce this significantly, and we have to look to creating productive opportunities rather than focusing on retail that is using up your foreign exchange, for which you are getting no benefit except getting sick and causing the health sector. When you look at the budget for our country, in the first 4 items...
Number one is health.
Well,
no, sorry, education.
No, education. I've never seen education be first, actually.
I think it was first this year
maybe
with 7 billion. Yeah.
Maybe this year, but generally, that's why I said the first 4,
right,
to be on the safe side, because I know it will always be national security, education, health will always factor there. We are spending so much on health in this country, and so much of it, I am sure if the minister had a say in it, if people could change their diet and we stopped having so many people eating. He actually pointed out the franchises, not me.
Yes.
You understand? He didn't just say have a bad diet. He actually pointed out. So I hope that it has not fallen on deaf ears, and that whoever grants these licenses, that people can make billions, over $1 billion in sales in selling that to people that end them up in hospital with all kinds of diseases that cost the state and you and the person so much, apart from the cost, all the other things that are associated with it. I hope it did not fall on deaf ears. And I hope that the government will take heed of that and stop granting these licenses, stop granting them and reduce it.
I think that's the key, that part there, stop granting them. Because it's one thing to say, well, this foreign franchise has been operating for decades. We can't just tell them, oh, you have to close down stores just because we say so. That's a little hard.
Limit.
Right? But new ones, and I think there was even a point during COVID, right? Some of it might have been non-food related franchises, but new franchises opening up when we have economic issues and foreign exchange shortages, right? As you pointed out, our reserve shrunk. You know, a reserve that the government keeps touting. We have so many months of cover, right? But I mean, all it takes is one wrong step, and then those months of cover is gone.
Well, actually, in the last economic bulletin that the Central Bank issued, for the first time, instead of saying 8 months, 8.5 months, it said 7-point-something months.
So it's dropping. It's dropping.
That's the first time it ever reached the number 7.
Right.
No, not 7, flatter. Yeah. But it went into the 7.
Under 8.
It went under 8. For the first time I saw it go under 8 in years.
The thing is,
in years.
I think this might be similar to how I viewed education when Talking Point started. An issue that people might not have realized is bigger than it is. People know it's an issue. People know health is an issue. People know Forex is an issue. But I think you're right. You're pointing out to something that might be even bigger than we think it is, because we open up all of these franchises, and you're right. Not only are the jobs essentially tickets to nowhere, but they're not even popular. They're not even oversubscribed. Our population will quicker go serve people on a cruise ship than serve our own in a fast food outlet, right? For the most part. There are exceptions, but that's the general pattern.
Yeah, we talk about the general pattern. We know what we're talking about.
Right, so it's not even offering us the value of a multitude of low-paying jobs to buttress the economy in a minor way.
And then again, and at the same point in time, we spend on education. You know, I read an article, again, this Dr. Marlene, she was quoting a young person who said that they had gotten a degree in social science, which, I mean, I don't think, you have to think twice about doing that unless you would do your master's and then become a professional, but that's another story. In 2019, got her degree in social science, and she says up to now she can't get a job because there's this mismatch. So we are spending money on education, which has to be dealt with, the mismatch, and it didn't start yesterday. So let me just say, it's something that needed to be dealt with for quite some time to make sure whatever your national economic objectives are, that it is aligned to your spend on education, value for money. And also because we don't want our young people who are educated to leave our shores and have that brain drain. So you're getting a mismatch on the education. So there's a waste on the education, and you're getting an increase in spend on the health ministry.
Yes.
And you're getting the foreign exchange being drawn down, and not only that, not a retail business, not a productive business which will produce foreign exchange for us, but a retail which is buy and sell and all of that buying and selling with the franchise holder is in US dollars. How is that good for the country? So I would do a little better than, I would say more than what Sean said. I think they should cut it out. I am not going to call one in particular, but I saw it just mushrooming all over the country.
You want a reduction at the very least?
There should be a reduction. I feel that if you did a study, given our economic situation, the Prime Minister has said the 4%, and the CPU and everybody has said the 4% is all we can afford because the economy is in a bad state. We do not have the money, we cannot pay more, and you're also going to be adding to inflationary trends. They have made it very clear that 4% is the most they can give because the economy is in a bad state. How could you then have the economy saying that things are not as good as they should be, which is a whole other conversation, and at the same time you're having these fast food franchises mushrooming all over the country? There must be some sort of study to be done to see how many can we support, because this is not about the businessman's interests. It is the country. You run in the country, not the businessman. You cannot have the tail wagging the dog. The tail is wagging this dog. The dog supposed to wag the tail, and you have to do what is in the interest of the country. So I am not sitting here and saying close down every business. I did not say that. I said you got to, number one, no, you shouldn't grant anymore. We are saturated. It's not good for our country. I've given all the reasons why, and on top of which we need to limit the numbers.
I think you actually convinced me off of my, well, it's kind of hard to tell people to reduce, right? Because you point out the fact that, hey, things are tough, right? And you got me thinking, what would we actually lose? We're not talking about a too big to fail bank or corporation or automobile manufacturer that doesn't just have entry-level jobs, but has a wide range of jobs, employs skilled labor, unskilled labor, large numbers of people. We don't even know how many people are employed by this industry, how much it actually adds to the job market, right? So how much will we actually lose? Because the food provided, right, the food retail provided, probably could be taken up by local manufacturing, local producers.
And it's not only that. You have to remember, one of the arguments from the minister is, and I don't know if he said it, let me be careful, I don't know if but he did say it maybe more, maybe not as directly as when I did some research. What they're saying, fast foods as a rule, they are nutrition weak.
Yes.
They are poor nutritional replacement. And a lot of our young children, when young minds are developing and brains are developing, one of the things that they have to have is a good balanced diet. You learn that in school, from when you're in primary school, you learn that. And too many of those franchises are, I don't know of any, that do not have too much salt, too much oil, or too much whatever
sugar,
it is,
because the soft
too much
comes
sugar,
with it.
All these things that are absolutely not good to be eaten on a regular basis, and the number of that we have in this country points to that.
Now this is where, though, we get into the taste of the Trinbagonian consumer, because even the thing with fast food is it's a lot of calories, and like you said, not a lot of nutritional value. All the vitamins, minerals, right? So it fattens you, but it doesn't give you a lot of what you need.
No.
Part of the problem, I think, though, is too often people like to eat that way. And it's not limited to just here in TNT, right? It's the whole, well, I have potato and rice and some chicken or some pork or whatever, and it's real carbs, a lot of fats, a lot of salt, a lot of sugar on everything, right? Some people put sugar in their potato salad, sugar in their coleslaw, right? And part of the issue, though, might just be because we might be able to, for the nutritional side, we might be able to solve part of the issue by reducing the fast food franchises. But then people might just index to local, unhealthy alternatives.
But I think what the minister did say was that we have to start looking at alternatives that are healthy. And I do think there are healthy alternatives. I think the bigger point that came out from, at least from a health perspective and from the minister's perspective, is that the franchises that we all, I'm not singling out any, you can single them out yourself, you will know who they are, which they are. The poor nutritional value that leads to diabetes, that leads to heart-related diseases, that leads to kidney diseases, that leads to the Ministry of Health not even having the Medicaid, because it's not only the doctors that they have to hire, they also have to buy the medication, and it's the taxpayers' cost. So I think what it is the issue is that you're looking at nutritional value of fast foods. So we simply have to look, listen, we didn't always eat things that were not healthy first. And I'm not saying not eat any. I did not come on this show to tell you do not eat any. What I'm saying is we've got to reduce it for sure because of the impact on our nutritional, on our health, and it costs all the things that I've said. But apart from that too, we have to look at healthy alternatives. And they are, you know how many people, for instance now, a lot of people eat cassava, and they don't fry it, you know. They have the cassava bowls. I don't know, a lot of people eat it. Or they have the sweet potato bowls. It's the packaging, giving people healthy alternatives that are attractive and nutritional.
I myself am looking to steam more.
Yeah, and not only that, if you notice too, I haven't bought it as yet, but I see they package like callaloo, or they package lentil peas. So if it is you're in a hurry, a lot of parents are under pressure.
You have that
right, so those are the things that you have to start looking. You have to start looking at those alternatives that are better for the
This is a problem that has been, I think over 2 decades, I believe.
Yes.
NCDs, more or less, it seems, even way back in 2004, might have been over 60% of mortality was due to NCDs. Right? Even back then, it was diabetes was costing us
what he said,
$484 million US per year.
He's talking about Trinidad? Is that Trinidad?
In 2001, that was the total cost of diabetes in Trinidad and Tobago.
You hear what he's saying?
484 million US.
You know where that 484 million US could go? That could go into education.
That was 2002,
that goes into education.
2001, folks. That's not 2024 with higher potential levels. I think it could
go into education. It could go into developing foreign exchange earners for this country. But this is what we're saying, and I can't. I put the blame solely on the government's feet because they are the ones that will either say, listen, we have too many of those franchises. The per capita, the size of the economy, the cost, etc., to nutrition, all the arguments, we can't have any more. But clearly, there is no end to the number of fast foods that are being allowed into this country.
Back to your opening point, somebody did approve all of this. You think the Minister of Health kind of made some waves behind the scenes? Who
approved it?
Somebody in the government had to approve of the franchises, right?
But yes.
So the Minister of Health naming names now.
Yeah, that's why I told him it was very, because having been in government, it has to be. Well, I'm not going to say, but what I will say is obviously he was willing. It reached a point that he had enough is enough.
Yeah.
Because if you are telling me that 60-something% of the diseases that you are seeing treating in the hospital come from non-communicable diseases, and those are
deaths.
A major part of it is the diet, and a lot of our young children are being fed that diet. I think he took the opportunity, and he said, actually, if I read correctly in the papers, he says, I probably will get in trouble for saying this. So he knew that he was taking a chance to say that, because he knew that to say that was to indirectly but powerfully condemn the fact that we have so many foreign U.S. franchises operating in this country. I know he tried to say maybe they could put less sugar in this or that thing, but if these are franchises, you know why they're franchises? Because they're standardized. And if you want to open it up, you've got to follow their standard. If you want to introduce a Trini version or something, yes, like how we do with KFC, we have our Trini version of chicken.
Because there is differences across the world with some.
Culturally.
But generally, what tends to happen though is the new ones don't have that latitude, it seems. They just come wholesale with what is in North America.
And I'm sure there's an arrangement about that. So what I'm just saying is that you cannot just decide once you have that's why it's called a franchise. It's called a franchise because the sign looks like if you were in New York. It looks like if you are in London. It looks like if you are in any part of Europe. It's the same thing. And people, that's where they go. And I understand the appeal to some people, especially if they're foreigners in a foreign country, it seems safe. We are in Trinidad. And what he has said, the very fact that he said that I know I might get in trouble for saying what I said, says it all to me. It says it all to me. He is saying that I am telling you that we have too many of these franchises, and we have got to do something about it. And somebody is not going to be happy. And I think it's the tail that's been
wagging the dog
for too long in this country.
Yeah. I guess you could say, and I say this, we can't afford the levels of corruption we have previously. We can't afford the tail to wag the dog. If you're telling us we can't afford this and we can't afford that, we also can't afford the tail to wag the dog.
Well, we're not wagging it all a lot. We didn't get a chance to talk about TCL. And I actually had looked at the judgment in 2022, but I guess we've run out of time. So
I mean, we could still mention it after the break.
Okay.
But what we're going to do, we could take the break now. When we come back, of course, we will open the phone lines, folks.
Yeah,
but
and I do have to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see how it goes. If we have calls, we could take your calls. If not, we have something else to talk about.
Yeah.
We have actually other things beyond just that, right? We could talk about as well. But stay tuned to talk about on WSN. Karen Neshishera is with me, Sean Michael Small. We'll be right back.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful. The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break a balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No.
Let's go to the last part.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God. So we kind of have to stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim, or the man has been the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI. Worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
It's bad, but then also welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. Usually we speak about politics and economics, but during the break we were speaking about taste and nutrition. What is going on? Neither of us are doctors or even chefs, but it is what it is because it's touching on an important aspect of our society. Something
our
I think.
Economy too,
What?
Ministry of Health.
Our economy as well. I think.
And our foreign exchange.
It's so many things that it's important, even if you want to discount any portion of it, when you add it all together, it's not a small thing. But with that said, let's talk about the phone lines. We want to hear from the reviewer. You could call in and have your say. I get it. Not everybody might necessarily see this as big as an issue as how we see it. And ironically, as time goes on, I'm seeing it more and more of an issue. Because we all saw what happened during COVID, and think about it, NCDs, I mean, COVID coverage caused me to learn a lot about NCDs, more than I knew before, and that's not something that I could just now ignore anymore, right? I myself have to be careful. I am suffering technically from an NCD, so, you know.
But what we're not saying, and we don't want it to get for the shoes, the message to be that we are saying close them down or close all of these franchises down. We're saying limit them significantly and don't introduce anymore for the reason we said. So we are not telling you shut down everyone. We understand that sometimes, for whatever reason, you know, we are not against having some, but there are too many, and we certainly should not grant
more. I think some people might underestimate, as you pointed out, variety in your diet. And fast food really does not allow.
It's not good for us.
It's
not good for the country.
It's meat, fat, sugar, carbs, salt. That's it.
But I didn't come here as a nutritionist, you know. I came here as foreign exchange. I came here as foreign exchange. I came here as the cost of the Ministry of Health to this country. I came to explain that we are not earning.
Well, the nutrition speaks to the Ministry of Health.
Right, so what I'm saying is my thing was still economics, even if it was about food.
True. Okay, speaking about that, just note, we only have one phone line, so please, if you're calling in, just be cognizant. Even when it seems as though we don't have a lot of calls, we do have complaints of people that can't get through, so please double check if it's anything to see which line is on your screen. 6285-4578, 6284-4578, that's the phone line that's working, because I do know that even times when it seems like there should not be a problem for people to call in, I am told after the fact from them that they had issues calling in. But while we wait, cement.
Yeah. Well, the only reason I'm bringing this up is because it's in the news. We were trying to talk about things that are relevant, and it had come in the news about 2 years ago when rock hard cement, which is cement that's already manufactured, and it comes out of Turkey, and what they do was package it. And the issue had arisen that, of course, it was too much competition for our TCS, which is really owned by 68% or something is owned by Cemex, which is a Mexican-based company. So I don't know to what extent it is a local company or this called Trinidad Cement Limited. It is really owned by the Mexican investors. But the issue was that rock hard was under a lot of pressure because the government, the Ministry of Trade, COTED, I should say, COTED, it would have to go to COTED, which is a branch of the CARICOM that deals with trade and industry. When a product is, I think it's Article 82 or 83, that is specific to this discussion, what happens is that if, in order to protect the community, to encourage trade within the community, you impose a common external tariff, so to encourage persons to buy and trade within the community. And one of the things that came up was the cement and the rock hard cement. And an argument that was set aside in 2022 was that it was hydraulic cement, which meant it was due, the common external tariff that should have been paid was 0 to 5%. The Ministry of Trade imposed a CET of 35%, and then about 2 years later, they imposed it up to 50%. Not only did they impose 50%, somebody's quoting, but also the quota limited and put rock hard out of business. And what's happening right now in Trinidad? We've had about 4 times since the last 2 years increases in the price of cement, which is needed for construction, and created a monopoly.
It was once for each of the last 4 years, but in a time scale, because we're just at the start of 2024, and it was at the tail end of 2021, so the time scale is actually 26 months for price increases. We have a caller from Diego Martin. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Hello.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Am I online? Sorry, on the air?
Yes, you're on the air. Sorry.
Okay. I want to comment briefly on what was being discussed, or what is being discussed in the program regarding the statement made by the Minister of Health. And And let me just say up front, I agree with everything that Mrs. Teixeira has said. But I just want to add another perspective, as it were. To me, it is curious that a minister in the cabinet of this country, which is the supreme authority for the leadership, management, and administration of things that happen in this country, has to resort to naming and shaming to invite consideration and hopefully a solution to a problem which he says exists. And it points to really the incompetence, perhaps, or the impotence of ministers generally within the cabinet. I mean, to deal with, for instance, the issue of controlling the sugar content in beverages, a regulation or perhaps legislation is the solution. When it comes to recipes of fast food franchises and outlets, it is perhaps more difficult to control that because it involves a process of, I suppose, random testing. And I'm just wondering, I think Mrs. Teixeira made the point that the minister is probably taking a risk by naming and shaming, and it does raise consideration as to whether this risk which he is taking is really trespassing, I guess, on the funding of his party. Thank you very much.
I don't know if I could have said it better than you did, and I do believe, I have no proof, but thank you very much for your contribution. I think he did take a risk. I admire him tremendously for doing that, and I believe that he did that because clearly it is not being dealt with in the cabinet, and I don't think it's incompetence as much as impotence.
Yeah.
And he's impotent to make any change because whoever is wagging that dog's tail has a lot. That tail is a very big tail, and is wagging it and is in control. So he felt that he needed to come out and make that statement. And anybody who can spell can read and understand what he was saying to us.
I think the question of incompetence and impotence might have been the wider cabinet as a whole.
They're
right?
not incompetent, they're impotent.
Well,
no, they're not incompetent. They are not incompetent. If you and I could understand that, no, it's not incompetent.
They can understand that too.
They are impotent to change the narrative. And he is impotent to do it too. And because he's impotent to do it, he did what we've seen more recent examples. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I'm not taking a position. I'm just saying with the Massey issue. Sometimes people feel so frustrated, and I'm not saying that the minister did the same thing, but it reminded me of a person frustrated and saying to hell, I'm coming out saying I'm going to say something.
And caller, I think the key takeaway for me is you're right. When he had to step out and do something that's against the norm, that's a sign, that's a clue that there's something wrong here. It's not 100% healthy. We have Shagonis on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on there.
Hello?
Morning, caller.
Good day.
Good day, good day.
Lady and gent. But the cement company, you must remember that was a private company. And it illustrates the good and the bad of our government. Our government decided to acquire the Trinidad Cement Company and make it a state company, more or less. But the public was able to access shares in it. When CEMEX from Mexico came, the next government facilitated their takeover of the cement company. And that is the cause of the problem. Any questions or comments?
Well, that story with the CEMEX goes back a few years, and I didn't come prepared to deal with it. I know it is not a straightforward matter.
With the ownership of TCL.
With the CEMEX. And I know I know that it caused a lot of disaffection, a lot of issues with regard to the takeover, in effect, of a Mexican conglomerate of what was supposed to be a company with Trinidad. But I think what I really wanted to say is that I want to be careful to say that COTED has the authority, it is in the articles, that even if the common external tariff is 5%, although they argued that it is whatever they argued, I don't want to go into the argument. Once quoted accepts the increased external tariff and accepts it and feels that it is in the interest of the country to protect the country's own cement industry, and quoted signs off on it, you can do it. So it was a legal decision that CCJ agreed to, but what we're seeing today is that Rockhard is, my understanding, is trading in nearly all the other Caribbean islands. And what has happened today is that TCL has created a monopoly. And one thing about a monopoly is, if you have a monopoly, you have no competition. If you have no competition, you can raise the prices. And what we're seeing is a significant increase in prices. And if there were competition and Rockhard was allowed to come back into the market and remove that level of quota, and remove the CET from 35 to now 50%, which it was legally allowed to do, then we would have what is a real democracy, a real, we do not have a socialist government. We would like fair competition. And what we have now is what they failed. In the judgment, let me just quickly say that in the judgment, one of the arguments was that the government deliberately did this in order to protect the CEMEX company so that they would have control over the pricing. The CCCJ said that they did not see adequate or sufficient evidence to support that. But what we are seeing today is that CEMEX, TCL, has no competition, and what we are seeing today is increases in the price of cement, and if you're building anything, you need cement. And if there was some healthy competition, which Rockhard provided, we would not be in the position we are today. But I am not saying to do that at the expense of TCL. I'm saying healthy competition is what is needed, and what you have created is a monopoly, which cannot be in the interest. It could be in the interest of CEMEX. Is it in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago and the managed street? No, it is not.
Go on.
Yeah, what you said is true. But that is the very reason why government took over Cement Limited. And to go and give it back to not only a private firm, but a foreign one.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I'm concerned, that was negative.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
I'm sorry, I didn't know he was still on the line.
Yes.
I'm sorry about that.
CEMEX's share, they started off with 20%, I think in 94.
60-something
then it went
now.
to 39 in 2015, and then it's 69.83
yeah, the only
in
company.
2017.
A Mexican company.
So the key point is it went from 40.
Why do you call it Mexican Cement Limited?
Right. It went up to almost 70% under the current administration, which has a hand in the current situation.
And there was a lot of confusion in it. It's not so straightforward, but I can't remember all the arguments, and I don't want to put my foot in my mouth with that and, you know, say things that I'm not quite sure. But I do know that there was a lot of resistance, I don't think I'm wrong to say that the then CEO Rollins Bertrand was very much against it. I hope I'm not wrong to say that, but I think he was very much against it.
Well, this reminds me to some extent of
and
when
where's Rollins Bertrand anymore? He's not there anymore, is he?
When the slips in Heathrow were sold, we lost an asset that could never be replaced.
Yes.
Right? That's something that somebody I know had lamented about multiple times.
Imagine who that person may be.
Exactly.
But I lamented too because I have family in England. I said, why can't Caribbean Airlines fly to London?
But also, and then after the Heathrow slips were sold, then they tried to fly to London, and it seems as though Cal at the time didn't even do a feasibility study on the flights after selling the slips. It was a mess, and I think this
losing so much tourist product that way.
This is a similar situation where you have a national cement company that is foreign owned. It's not as though we could easily turn back that clock, right? We have Diego Martin on the line. Good morning, caller.
They knew what they were doing.
Good morning, Mr. Shishara and Shishara and Sean.
Morning.
Yes, just concerning the statement by Mr. Diyal Singh. The fact is that people, what's happening is the poorer class of people in the country that really, have no choice but to buy these sorts of foods. I mean, like doubles and all this sort of thing. So cheap food for them to eat in mornings and whatever. Sometimes we just have meals for the evening times. And it's because of a lot of poverty all over, you get a lot of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I, as a little boy myself, I used to, there was no KFC around my time. Yeah, the woman around used to sell nice chicken and chips. I was also in church here.
I remember that.
I used to buy one my excellent. And then Johnny's Morales had all his franchises and so on. I used to purchase from him, and he used to, I used to supply them, as a matter of fact, with other stuff like this thing. And when Royal Cards came on his MP5 or MP8, whatever it is, I used to supply Royal Cards to myself. I used to indulge in it. That a young boy there, I think his name is Ali. The first place I really ate fried chicken and so on was at Starlight Drive-In. I used to go there every Monday night when they had shows and so on, and the whole family used to go for that. And I used to buy there, and then he was the one who went to Royal Cards and gave them that recipe and cooked for them. But after a while, they stopped paying him with royalties and everything broke loose. But everything is choice in life.
Mm-hmm.
As you get older, you have to know what you're doing. While you're young and you think you won't effects them. When you get older, then you will get effects. But it's a choice for everybody, you know. So people have to make the right choice and try and take off their health, especially when you cross 50. When you cross 50, start thinking seriously about your health. And everything will work out for you. But thank you for taking my call and have a good day, both of you.
Yes.
Thank you, caller. It's good to hear from you again.
Yes, I just wanted to point out, though, we are not saying that, and I hope we haven't said that, that we can't have fast foods at all. Mm-hmm. We understand that because it's not a new invention. But you use the example of the doubles vendors. That's a good example of the persons who have the double vendors thing is owned by them, Trinidadians.
Yeah.
They probably owned by the family, employing their own family, and they keep the profits right here in Trinidad. It doesn't go outside, except they have to import the chana or curry,
and maybe the flour.
right? What they have to import, but they always import it anyhow.
Right.
So we are not, what we are against is these franchises are using up your US dollars, and they are significant. And so that is the argument. It's not that we say, if it was a doubles vendor, I'm happy for the doubles vendor. I'm happy for the person who's making the roti because I eat doubles. Everybody eats doubles in Trinidad. But when I go buy the doubles, man, guess who owns? He owns it. We are talking about the loss of foreign exchange. These, you know, and so we understand your point. But what our point was that the foreign exchange issue, and many times the doubles businesses are owned by the families.
That's the thing. I think one of the issues now is, and at some point, fast food was cheap food. But now, I'm seeing it less and less, and I know people who see it less and less as cheap food, right? Not to say that they're dirt poor, but it's just not worth it to them because of the price. And the foreign franchises could get really expensive. It's a luxury at this point. Now, local fast food like doubles, that's different. And as Karen said, it doesn't add to the foreign exchange problem. But I think the whole perception that, you know, fast food in general is this price-saving measure. Well, yes, you can maybe get the cheapest option on the menu and it might be relatively cheap. But for the most part, if you want like a decent-sized meal, it's not going to be cheap. You could spend $50 easy as an adult, you know, to get a relatively decent-sized meal. That's not a cheaper option than, you know, maybe a healthier option for $50 or less.
Yeah, and I think I wanted the caller to know that what we were really trying to focus on is the use of our dwindling foreign exchange.
And
because that is what, yes, because that is what is drawing down our foreign exchange now to 4. Was it now? I said it was 6.23, and it was 6.8 just a few months ago. That are those franchises are a major contributor to that. The doubles vendor, the little roti, they are actually creating employment for their family. And I don't know how much foreign exchange, because flour has to be imported anyhow. The chana is still imported anyhow. So I don't know to what extent the nutrition is an issue by itself. We understand that, but that's not what we're talking about. Is the use of our foreign exchange with little or no return, and the fact that it is contributing to our health issues.
As you pointed out, nutrition then leads to NCDs, and that's a cost on the
right.
health side, right? But yes, I think a doubles vendor, economically speaking, at least for the people operating it and owning it, does more for them than an entry-level job in a fast food franchise.
You're so right. And they've become what you call small enterprise or
micro enterprises.
With entrepreneurs, which is what you want to encourage.
And I think the best double vendors, I don't know what factors.
Don't call out any names because I have my favorites.
Right, you have your favorites, but the most successful double vendors could make a pretty profit.
Yeah, and that's great.
Despite the fact, please don't think that doubles vendors are charging us $6 and they're taking home $4 in profit. It's not, the margins are not that grand, right? But
the same thing with fast food, the margins are not.
Margins, yes.
It's the amount.
It's the amount, right?
Turnover.
But the key point is the foreign exchange bill for doubles is probably, in all likelihood, I think it's fair to assume, because we don't have the actual numbers, but the foreign exchange bill for doubles is probably a lot less.
And you know what, too? It's providing employment for entrepreneurs. It's creating an entrepreneurial thing, what you would call a small and micro entrepreneur, which we want to encourage in this country. The persons who have those franchises, I would be kind of safe to say maybe multimillionaires. So it is a different category. And we as a country, not as a thing, as a country, as a government, has to be considered sustainable development. You've got to be concerned to help those who are the lower end to come up the ladder. And I think those opportunities are there for persons who sell, using the doubles as an example, doubles, roti, whatever.
Well, any kind of local
what else they
lunch
sell,
food. We have point fights on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on here.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Sean, I know I'm kind of running off the topic a little bit.
That's fine.
But I know you all spoke about the tail wagging the dog and all this thing.
Oh.
But I remember very well Mariano Brown. I was living in Tobago at the time. Every Friday, he used to talk about, I'm going back to the Petrosim thing, about Dr. Rowley wouldn't make the hard decision. And I know it's Petrosim you're talking about. And when he did take the hard decision, he gets so much of blows. Rare blows from even the ones who were daring him to do it. So I'm wondering now, when the health minister makes hard decisions, the dog might wag the tail might wag the dog. Where's your outlook on that? What kind of that?
Well, let me just say on that, that's part of being government, you see. When you're in government, you always have to look at the big picture. Yes, they have sectoral interests, but sectoral interests are important, but the sectoral interests have to align to the interests of the country. So I could give you an example of making a hard decision and the government backing down. Look at where we are today. I was nowhere near government, but I saw it in the papers because it was a big, big deal when they decided to close down a lot of those private members clubs, which were really casinos, but they come under the Private Members Club Act. And our current minister, in one of his first budget speeches, said that Trinidad and Tobago has the largest number of private members clubs in the world. Now, they passed the legislation supposedly to deal with the Gambling Commission to control it. And to date, it has been passed, but it has not been proclaimed. And the difference between being passed and proclaimed means that the regulations or whatever you have to do to bring it into force has not been done. Just like the Procurement Act, where they took how many years to do it. And tied to that was that the minister, when he had to go to Parliament to give the reports from the FIU on the suspicious transactions, said that there were $5.9 billion worth of suspicious transactions, many or most of them coming from the gambling, money laundering sector. So hard decisions require governments know what you do not know. And what you do not know, that's what governments require to. If it is done in the interest of the people, not only tail wagging the dog, but in the interest of the people, including the tail. They should get, everyone should benefit, but if they do it in the interest, that's what courage requires, and you are going to get a backlash. But if there's a backlash and you know at the end of the day why you're doing it, you have curious information, special information you and I do not have. So you have to understand. A good example is that gambling thing. That now $5.9 billion worth of suspicious transactions, many of which are connected to the gambling that are exploding all over this country. And just last thing, why I'm saying that is because before I came into government, there was a whole big bacchanal on Arpita Avenue with women coming out there with their babies and things, putting pressure on the government to back down from closing down these private members club. How are we going to staff? How we could do that? And the government backed down. And Prime Minister Manning at the time said, I put a sunset clause, but we came out of office before we could implement it. So it's hard decisions, but the decisions are made for a reason.
It's similar to me with public transportation, where we say we need to improve the system and build something bigger and better. And then they're like, well, what about the taxi man? And in my mind, I'm like, well, first of all, the system will employ people. I was like, why are we like, well, you know, this unregulated business that has its problems, we need to keep that instead of trying to get a better system, which could employ them anyway.
And that's crime, by the way. Money laundering is crime. So just in case you didn't realize.
The thing is, the backlash that Karen pointed out is real. Just look at the NAR, right?
Yeah.
That's a basic example. Will the minister experience something like it? This situation might not be quite the same thing. But yes, those questions are valid with regards to what could be the negative consequences, politically speaking, and financing, campaign financing, blah, blah, blah. We don't want to get into there because we don't want to imply things we don't necessarily know. But we believe, and it's safe to assume that, it's not all fine and dandy and above board 100% and good, right?
Well, I can say that would be a true conclusion, a reasonable conclusion to come to.
I think I'll end with this, and that's a good point with the gambling legislation. Part of the issue is the inability to communicate, because as Karen said,
implement and execute.
Well, right, implement and execute, but also
and why you're not doing it?
Why? Right, because the why. People don't always know the why.
Well, we could guess the why. You could guess the why.
No, but what I'm saying is when you make these hard decisions for the betterment of society that's unpopular, you know the why, but the population don't know the why. You need to figure out a way to explain to the population effectively the whys. Otherwise, you get to be like NAR. You do something benefits for the party, and then you're out.
NAR had a lot of lessons to learn for sure. But definitely, if it is for the benefit, gambling is a good example, and it's a crime. Money laundering is a crime, and it is one of the ways in which it is contributing to the crime on the streets.
Yes.
Right. So that was a good example, and it put so much pressure on Patrick Manning at the time. So I heard he backed down, but he put a sunset clause. Well, he came out of power, and you have gambling casinos all over the place.
Well, folks, we have to end here. I want to thank the good lady herself for coming on. I want to thank all of our callers. It was great to hear from you, Mr. Digger Martin. You know which one of our old, long-time original callers. It is nice to hear from you once again. Hope all is well. Folks, despite all the pessimisms, we still believe in this paradise called Trinidad and Tobago. And
it's not paradise lost.
Well, hopefully not. Not yet, maybe. At least not during Carnival Monday and Tuesday, things were okay. But we still believe in TNT.
We do.
Make today a good day, as my coach always says. We will see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN. FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
My name is Carl Media, and the founder and the host of Ever Increasing Voice Ministries. Join me every Saturday and Sunday on WESN, this powerful station, at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. nightly. Also on Sundays, I'll be on at 7 a.m., 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. at night time. When you come here, we are getting people heavenly ready.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the